Blood splattered across the dusty boardwalk as the first bullet found its mark. Kaya yanked her sister beneath a wagon, heart hammering against her ribs. The gunfire unleashed a torrent of fragmented memories, screams in the night, orange flames licking at hide walls, a strong hand pulling her through darkness, dreams she dismissed for years as fever nightmares. 3 more shots cracked through Deadwood's morning air. A man's scream cut short. Bodies scrambled for cover, while others froze like prey animals sensing the hawk's shadow. "Don't look," Kaya whispered, pressing Lila's face against her shoulder. Her fingers trembled not just from fear of the present danger, but from the half-remembered terrors clawing at the edges of her consciousness. 4 winters of strange dreams, where a copper-skinned man with gentle eyes called her a different name. The shooter staggered from the saloon, revolver smoking. His wild gaze settled on the sisters. For one terrible moment, Kaya thought he might aim in their direction. A deputy's bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fired blindly into the air before collapsing in a heap. Damn road agents getting bolder by the week. Spat a passing miner, carefully stepping around the growing pool of blood. Soon, we won't be able to take a piss without some desperado pulling iron. Only when the deputies dragged away both shooter and victim did Kaya pull Lila from their hiding place. At 9 years old, Lila was a year younger than Kaya, but the hollowness in her eyes aged her well beyond her years. "We should go home," Lila pleaded, voice quavering. "Ma needs us." Kaya adjusted their pathetic basket of withered potatoes and wilted greens. "Not without medicine money," she said, her voice harder than a child's had any right to be. "Remember what Ma said? Look hungry but not desperate." Lila finished mechanically. The morning's violence had scattered potential customers. The girls needed at least 30 cents for the fever medicine their mother desperately required. Sarah Miller had been burning with fever for 3 days now, her breathing shallow and rattling like dry leaves scraping stone. "There's Burke," Lila whispered, pointing toward a red-faced trader setting up his stall beneath a faded "Welcome to Deadwood" site of the Black Hills' richest diggings banner that stretched across the main street. "Not him?" Kaya interrupted sharply, pulling her sleeve down to cover the fresh welts on her arm, Burke's parting gift from yesterday when he'd accused her of stealing. "We'll try Mrs. Holloway." They wove through the reconvening crowd, 2 small ghosts among Deadwood's rough-edged populace. The mining boom had drawn all manner to the Dakota Territory. Prospectors fleeing the played-out California fields, women with painted faces and hard eyes, card sharks with quick fingers, and desperate families seeking fortune at any cost. "Potatoes, fresh greens," Kaya called, voice stronger than her diminutive frame suggested. Best in the territory. Few spared them a glance. In a town where whiskey flowed like water and gold dust changed hands by the ounce, 2 ragged children hawking shriveled vegetables barely registered. The crowd suddenly parted. Whispers hissed between clenched teeth. "Indian, Lakota, ghost warrior." A copper-skinned man strode through the marketplace movements, fluid as a mountain lion. He stood head and shoulders above most miners' black hair woven into a single braid adorned with an eagle feather. A tomahawk hung at his side, its handle worn smooth from years of use. His eyes, obsidian dark and alert, scanned the crowd with predatory intensity that made Kaya's heart skip a beat. Something about him seemed achingly familiar, though she knew they'd never met. "Potatoes," she called out, voice cutting through the sudden quiet. "Best in the territory." The warrior's gaze snapped to her. For a breath, Kaya thought she'd made a fatal mistake. But as he approached, she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not anger, but a flicker of recognition that made no sense to her. "How much?" he asked, voice low and surprisingly gentle with only a slight accent. Kaya swallowed hard. 2 cents each for the potatoes, penny for the greens. The warrior studied their meager offerings, then his gaze shifted to Kaya's face, lingering there with unsettling intensity. She felt caught in his stare like a rabbit before a fox, yet strangely unafraid. "Your arm," he said suddenly, nodding toward her sleeve. Kaya froze. "It's nothing." "Show me." Not a request, but not threatening either. Reluctantly, Kaya pushed up her sleeve, revealing angry red welts. A muscle twitched in the warrior's jaw. "Who?" "Burke." Lila volunteered, then ducked behind Kaya when the warrior's gaze shifted to her. "He thought I was stealing." Kaya explained quickly. "I wasn't." The warrior nodded once and then reached into a pouch at his waist. To Kaya's astonishment, he dropped 4 silver dimes into her palm, enough for all their produce many times over. "I'll take it all," he said. Kaya stared at the coins, stunned. "This is too much." "Medicine is expensive," he replied simply. "How did you know we needed medicine?" Lila asked, peering around her sister. A sad smile touched the warrior's lips. "Your eyes tell stories, little one." As he gathered their pitiful harvest, Kaya noticed the hostile stares directed their way. Indians were barely tolerated in Deadwood, even peaceful ones. Especially since the Devil's Day massacre last year, when renegades had attacked a stagecoach just outside town, killing 6 passengers, including the mayor's brother. "You should go," she whispered urgently. "They don't like your kind here." "They don't like your kind much either," he observed, glancing at their worn clothes and dirty faces. "What is your mother's sickness?" "Fever. She burns like fire but shivers with cold," Kaya said. "The doctor wants $1 to visit." The warrior's expression darkened. "Fever can be treated without white man's medicine." He hesitated, then asked, "Your father?" "Dead," Kaya answered flatly. "Mining accident last winter." Something shifted in the warrior's eyes, a decision made. "I am called Taka," he said. "In your tongue, it means wind." The name sent an unexpected shiver down Kaya's spine like a half-remembered song. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted across the market. A mountain of a man with a tangled red beard shoved through the crowd, face mottled with rage. "You!" he bellowed, pointing a thick finger at Kaya. "Thieving little rat, those are my coins." Burke, the trader, his bloodshot eyes fixed on the silver dimes, clutched in Kaya's hand. She stepped in front of Lila protectively. "I earned these fair," she said, though her voice wavered. Burke's meaty hand shot out to grab her, but never reached its target. Taka moved with startling speed, catching Burke's wrist in an iron grip. "The girl took nothing from you," Taka said, voice deadly quiet. Burke's face purpled. "Let go, you filthy redskin, before I cut that hand off." "Try," Taka suggested calmly. The marketplace went silent, all eyes riveted on the confrontation. Burke reached for the knife at his belt with his free hand, but Taka twisted his captured wrist slightly. The trader dropped to his knees with a howl. "In my village," Taka said, his voice carrying across the hushed market, "a man who harms children is considered less than human. What does that make you?" He released Burke's wrist with a contemptuous shove that sent the trader sprawling in the dirt. Burke scrambled to his feet, spitting curses. "You'll regret this. Indian Sheriff Morton will hear about this assault." Taka turned his back on the humiliated man and faced Kaya once more. "Where do you live, child?" Kaya hesitated, torn between fear of bringing this dangerous stranger to their home and desperate need for the medicine he might provide. Something in her gut told her to trust him, though she couldn't explain why. "Your mother grows weaker with each breath," Taka said. "Decide quickly." "Follow us," Kaya decided. "But if you harm my mother or sister..." A rare smile touched Taka's lips. "You will kill me yourself?" Despite everything, Kaya nodded firmly. "Yes, then we understand each other." He gestured for them to lead the way. Their cabin perched on a small hill outside town, a ramshackle structure near Devil's Gulch, named for the wicked turn in the creek, where 3 prospectors had died during last spring's flash flood. Through struggling pines, The imposing two-story mansion of Bartholomew Keegan loomed on a distant ridge, a constant reminder of the land dispute that had been ongoing since their father's death. Inside the cabin, Sarah Miller lay on a straw mattress, her face flushed crimson auburn hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. When she spotted Taka ducking through the doorway, panic flared in her fever-bright eyes. "He helped us, Ma," Kaya explained quickly. "Bought our potatoes and says he knows about fevers." "Why would you help us?" Sarah managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Taka didn't answer immediately. His gaze traveled the cabin's sparse interior before returning to Sarah. "I had a daughter," he said simply. "She would be their age now." Sarah's expression softened slightly. Even through fever, a mother recognized another parent's pain. "Had lost." Taka replied the single word, carrying a weight of grief that needed no elaboration. From a pouch at his waist, he produced a small bundle of herbs wrapped in deerskin. "Willow bark for the fever," he explained, picking out various plants. "These roots for strength. These leaves to fight what causes the sickness. Indian medicine." Sarah murmured, skepticism warring with desperate hope in her voice. "Lakota medicine," Taka corrected gently. "Given by Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, to heal all peoples, not only mine." As he prepared the remedy, Kaya noticed how his large hands moved with surprising delicacy, crushing herbs between his fingers while whispering words in a language she didn't understand. Yet somehow felt she should. "A prayer," she asked. "Gratitude," Taka replied. "To thank the plants for giving their life to heal." When the bitter tea was ready, he helped Sarah drink it, supporting her head with unexpected gentleness. "Rest now," he instructed. "The medicine will work through day and night." He had just promised to hunt something for their dinner when 3 sharp knocks rattled the door. Taka moved silently to the side, one hand dropping to his tomahawk. "Who is it?" Kaya called, her mouth suddenly dry. "Open this door, girl." The voice was unmistakable, Bartholomew Keegan. With a silent signal from Taka, Kaya opened the door to reveal their landlord's corpulent figure squeezed into an expensive black suit, his florid face wearing its customary expression of contempt. "Rent's due," he announced without preamble. "It's not due until next week," Kaya protested. Keegan's thick lips curved into an unpleasant smile. "I've decided to collect early. $5. But it's always been 3. Prices go up, girl, especially for squatters on my land." "We're not squatters. We have papers." "Papers can burn," Keegan interrupted coldly. "Just like this shack could if the right accident happened." Taka stepped out from behind the door, seeming to fill the small cabin with his presence. "The girls have suffered enough loss," he said quietly. "They don't need threats from men who have plenty." Keegan's eyes widened momentarily, then narrowed with calculation. "A savage in our midst." His gaze flickered between Taka and the girls. "Interesting company you keep, Miss Miller." As they argued over the rent, Keegan's gaze lingered unpleasantly on Kaya. "A girl your age could be useful in my household." Taka's hand tightened visibly on his tomahawk, but Keegan was already turning away, demanding his $5 by sundown the next day. "We don't have $5, Kaya whispered after Keegan left. "We barely had 3 saved." "He looks at Kaya funny," Lila observed quietly. "Like he's hungry." Taka's expression darkened. "You will not go to his house," he said to Kaya. "No matter what." As the day progressed into evening, Sarah's condition improved markedly. The fever broke just as Taka had predicted, leaving her weak but clear-eyed. She regarded their Lakota savior with cautious gratitude. "You saved my life," she acknowledged. "I won't forget that." Taka inclined his head. "I did what any would do." "No," Sarah contradicted softly. "Not any, Not in these parts. Night fell, and still Taka made no move to leave. He fashioned a sleeping pallet near the door, his presence a shield between the vulnerable family and whatever threats might come. Kaya should have been frightened to have this warrior, this stranger, sleeping in their home. But instead she felt safer than she had in months. As she drifted to sleep, fragments of her recurring dream returned a man singing softly in an unfamiliar language, the scent of pine smoke, a silver bird catching moonlight. The next morning broke clear and cool. Kaya found Taka kneeling in their small garden patch, his hands working the soil with practiced ease. "Your land is thirsty," he said without looking up. "But it can grow more than you think." Their peaceful moment shattered as a plume of dust rose on the approaching road. 3 horsemen appeared: Keegan on a sleek black stallion, Sheriff Morton on a dappled mare, and a third man Kaya didn't recognize. Taka stood his ground as they reined to a stop, his hand resting casually near his tomahawk. "Told you, Sheriff," cursed Keegan's voice carried clearly. "Indian trespassing on my property." Sheriff Morton was a lean, weathered man with a drooping mustache and eyes that had seen too much frontier justice. He studied Taka without immediate hostility. "This land belongs to the Miller family," Taka stated calmly. "They have papers signed by a dead man." Keegan scoffed. "Worth less than kindling now." Sheriff Morton held up a hand to silence him. "What's your business here, Indian?" "The woman was sick. I brought medicine." "He's a goddamn savage playing doctor." Keegan spat. "Probably poisoned her." The third man, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward in his saddle. "I know him," he said, his voice carrying a lilting Irish accent. "That's the ghost warrior. Killed 6 settlers in Wyoming territory. Left their scalps hanging from a cottonwood." Sheriff Morton's posture stiffened. "That true?" "Lies," Taka said flatly. Keegan's face split in a triumphant grin. "Well now, Sheriff, seems we've got ourselves a genuine murderer." Morton's hand moved to his holstered revolver. "I think you'd better come with me, Chief." "I have committed no crime here," Taka replied, his voice still calm, but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "And I will not leave these women and children unprotected." "Protected from what?" the Irish rider scoffed. "They've got the law." "Which law?" Taka asked, his eyes never leaving Keegan. "The one that takes their land, or the one that looks away when men like him sell children to the highest bidder?" A shocked silence fell. "What the hell are you talking about?" Sheriff Morton demanded. 4 winters ago." Taka continued, his voice carrying across the clearing. "A band of men attacked a Lakota village near the Black Hills. They came at night, burning teepees with families still inside. They killed our warriors and took our children." His gaze bored into Keegan. "Your upstanding citizen led them. Raving lunacy." Keegan blustered, though his face had drained of color. "The savage is clearly deranged." With deliberate movements, Taka reached into his pouch and withdrew a small silver pendant on a leather cord. "This belonged to my daughter Ayanna, who disappeared that night." He held up the pendant, a small bird in flight. The leader of the attack had a distinctive scar. He traced a line from behind his ear, down his neck, exactly where a jagged scar was visible above Keegan's collar. "What's this got to do with Keegan?" the sheriff asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "He also took a Lakota war lance with eagle feathers. My father's lance." Taka's eyes burned with controlled fury. "It hangs above his fireplace." Sheriff Morton's expression hardened. "That true, Bart? There is no girl." Keegan protested too vehemently. "No village." "You were gone that winter, Bart," Sheriff Morton noted. "Said you were prospecting in the Black Hills." The Irishman shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "There were rumors about children brought to Deadwood. Sold off to mining camps and eastbound traders." "Damn you, O'Malley," Keegan snarled. "Where's the girl now, Bart?" Morton asked quietly. There is no girl. Taka's voice cut through Keegan's protests. My daughter would be Kaya's age now. Kaya felt a strange buzzing in her ears at these words. Could it be no impossible? She was James and Sarah Miller's daughter. Wasn't she? Sheriff Morton looked between them all, weighing his decision. We'll settle this. Mr. Keegan, I believe we should have a look at your residence. Keegan's response was violent and unexpected. He kicked his horse forward directly at Taka, while simultaneously drawing a revolver from inside his coat. Lying savage bastard! He screamed, firing wildly. The first shot kicked up dirt at Taka's feet. Before Keegan could fire again, Taka rolled beneath the horse's belly and emerged on the other side, yanking Keegan from the saddle. The revolver discharged again as they crashed to the ground. Sheriff Morton drew his weapon but hesitated, unsure where to aim in the chaos. Stand down, he shouted. Both of you. Keegan scrambled to his feet, still clutching his gun. But before he could raise it, Taka's tomahawk flashed in the morning light, knocking the revolver from Keegan's hand with a crack of steel on bone. I did not come here for blood. Taka said, his breath even. I came for justice. The standoff was broken by Sarah's voice from the cabin doorway. Sheriff Morton. She called, pale but standing with Kaya and Lila beside her. Since James died, Keegan's been trying to force us off our land. Last month he suggested I send Kaya to work in his house to pay the rent. Her eyes hardened. When I refused, he said there were men who'd pay good money for a pretty girl Kaya's age. The woman's delirious with fever. Keegan protested. Despite Keegan's protests, Sheriff Morton insisted they ride to his mansion immediately. Before leaving, Taka knelt before Kaya. I will return, he promised. Be watchful until then. Something in his eyes, some deep unspoken emotion, made Kaya nod solemnly. We will. As they rode away, she couldn't shake the strange, disquieting feeling that Taka was taking a piece of her with him, or perhaps taking back something that had always been his. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Sarah improved steadily Taka's medicine, working what seemed like a miracle. As dusk approached, Lila spotted riders approaching Sheriff Morton and several deputies with Taka riding among them. But where was Keegan? Mrs. Miller. Morton called as they dismounted, his expression grave. We found evidence at Keegan's residence that supports the allegations. He pulled out a folded paper. Including this deed to your land, the genuine article, not the forgery Keegan's been using. And Keegan? Sarah asked. In custody, Morton replied tersely. We found more than just the lance. Records of children bought and sold like cattle. Indian children, orphans, sometimes even children purchased from desperate families. His weathered face showed rare emotion. It goes back years. Did you find any information about Ayana? Sarah asked, glancing at Taka. Her name appears in his records. Taka said quietly. Sold 3 winters ago to someone in St. Louis. Kaya felt an inexplicable pang at these words, grief for a girl she'd never known, yet somehow felt connected to. As they discussed details of Keegan's operation, a deputy galloped up his horse, lathered with sweat. Sheriff, he shouted, dismounting in a cloud of dust. Keegan's escaped overpowered the jail guard, took his gun and horse. When Morton demanded, face darkening, not 20 minutes ago. We've got men searching town, but... The deputy hesitated, eyes sliding toward the Miller cabin. He was raving about finishing what he started here. Morton swore colorfully. Mrs. Miller, gather what you need. We're taking you to town where it's safe. No, Sarah said firmly, surprising everyone. This is our home. I won't be driven from it, not by Keegan, not by fear. Then I'm leaving deputies here, Morton insisted. Before he could elaborate, a flicker of movement caught Kaya's eye, a shadow detaching itself from the trees at the edge of their clearing. Then another. And another. "Sheriff," she whispered urgently, pointing. Morton turned, hand dropping to his gun. "Sweet Jesus," he muttered. "There must be a dozen of them." Figures emerged from the woods, rough-looking men with rifles and determined expressions. At their center rode Keegan, blood streaking one side of his face, eyes wild with rage. Beside him sat Theodore Cox, his foreman and known enforcer, a snake of a man with yellow teeth and dead eyes. "Morton," Keegan bellowed, "turn over the Indian and clear out. This is private business." "The law doesn't work that way." "Bart," Morton called back, gesturing for his deputies to spread out. "Tell your men to lower their weapons." Cox spat a stream of tobacco juice. "We ain't here to palaver, Sheriff," he drawled. "We're here to settle accounts." His cold gaze fixed on Taka. "That redskin's been stirring up trouble from Wyoming to the Dakota line. Time he paid his due." "And the Millers," Morton demanded. "They part of your reckoning, too." Keegan's laugh held no humor. "They're collateral damage. Squatters who've seen too much. You know I can't let that happen," Morton said quietly. "Then you'll burn with them." Keegan raised his hand. "Light 'em up, boys." 3 of his men hurled blazing torches toward the cabin. One landed short, but 2 struck the dry wooden wall's flames, catching immediately. "Fire!" Sarah gasped, pushing the girls toward the door. Chaos erupted. Morton and his deputies exchanged gunfire with Keegan's men, forcing the attackers to scatter for cover. Taka launched himself at the nearest torch thrower, his tomahawk finding its mark with deadly precision. "Get to the stream," he shouted to Sarah, who was frantically gathering what few precious belongings she could save. Kaya grabbed Lila's hand and pulled her through the door, ducking as bullets whizzed overhead. They ran toward the small creek that marked the edge of their property, Sarah following close behind. Halfway there, a mounted figure cut them off, Cox, his yellow grin gleaming in the fading light. "Well, well," he chuckled, leveling a shotgun at them. "Where you ladies rushing off to?" Sarah pushed the girls behind her. "Let the children go, Cox," she pleaded. "They've done nothing to you." "Ain't personal, Mrs. Miller," he replied with chilling casualness. "Just tying up loose ends. Mr. Keegan's particular about that." A war cry split the air as Taka charged from the shadows, knife drawn. Cox swung his shotgun around, but too late, Taka's blade slashed across his arm, sending the weapon flying. "Run!" Taka shouted to the Millers, grappling with Cox as the foreman drew a Bowie knife from his boot. They fled toward Devil's Gulch, where the creek cut deep into the hillside, forming a series of small caves. Behind them, the cabin was now fully engulfed in flames, illuminating the brutal firefight between Morton's men and Keegan's gang. "In here," Sarah urged, pulling the girls into one of the larger cave openings. They huddled in its damp darkness, listening to the distant gunfire and shouting. Or, what about Taka? Kaya whispered, heart pounding with inexplicable terror for the Lakota warrior's safety. "He can take care of himself," Sarah replied, though uncertainty tinged her voice. Minutes stretched like hours. The gunfire grew sporadic, then ceased altogether. Footsteps approached their hiding place, heavy boots scraping on stone. "I know you're in there," came Keegan's voice, slurred with pain or drink or both. "Come out now and I'll make it quick." Sarah pushed the girls deeper into the cave. "Stay here," she whispered. "No matter what happens, don't make a sound." Before they could protest, she slipped out of the cave into the gathering darkness. "Mr. Keegan," they heard her say, voice remarkably steady. "Isn't burning our home enough?" "It'll never be enough," he snarled. "Not after what your Indian friend cost me. Years of work connections in Chicago, New York, all gone. The law will find you," Sarah warned. Sheriff Morton knows everything. Keegan laughed bitterly. Morton's bleeding out by your burning shack. No one's coming to save you. Inside the cave, Kaya clutched Lila, close, mind racing. There had to be something they could do. Her gaze fell on a loose rock near her foot. Not much of a weapon, but perhaps enough to distract Keegan if she could get behind him. Stay here, she whispered to Lila. Don't move until I come back or Ma calls you. Kaya, no. Lila pleaded, clinging to her sister's arm. I have to help Ma. Kaya pried Lila's fingers loose and slipped deeper into the cave, remembering from previous explorations that it connected to another entrance further along the gulch. She moved as quickly as she dared through the narrow, twisting passage, heart hammering against her ribs. Strange confidence guided her steps, as if she'd navigated darkness like this before. When she reached the second entrance, she peered out cautiously. 20 yards away, Keegan held Sarah at gunpoint near the edge of the creek. His back was to Kaya's position, perfect. She picked up a heavy rock and crept forward, keeping to the shadows. Should have taken my offer, Keegan was saying. A room in my house for the girl. She'd have been treated well enough. No, you're a monster, Sarah spat. Trading in children like cattle. Business. Keegan corrected coldly. Profitable business. Do you know how much a healthy child fetches in Chicago or San Francisco? Kaya was 10 feet away now, rock raised. Just a few steps more. A twig snapped beneath her foot. Keegan whirled, gun swinging toward her. Well now, he grinned malevolently. The littler Miller girl saved me the trouble of hunting you down. Run, Kaya! Sarah screamed, lunging at Keegan. He backhanded her savagely, sending her sprawling. Then he advanced on Kaya, limping slightly, evidently wounded in the earlier fighting. You look so much like her, you know, he said conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than murder. Same eyes, same defiance. Unlike who? Kaya demanded, backing away, slowly, still clutching her rock. The Lakota woman. Your mother. Keegan's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. Oh yes, I remember every detail of that night. How she fought when we took you. How she screamed your name, Ayanna. The word struck Kaya like physical blow. Memories exploded behind her eyes, a woman's face kind and determined. A boy teaching her to use a small bow. A man, Taka, lifting her toward the stars. You're lying, she whispered, though deep inside she knew he wasn't. Ask your Lakota friend, Keegan taunted. Ask him about little Ayanna stolen 4 winters ago. Ask him why he's really here. He came for justice. Kaya said, finding strength in her mounting fury. He came for you, Keegan corrected. But he'll find only your corpse. Something whirred past Kaya's ear, a tomahawk spinning end over end. It struck Keegan's outstretched arm, shattering bone with a sickening crack. The gun dropped from his nerveless fingers as he howled in agony. Taka emerged from the shadows, blood streaming from a gash in his side, but moving with deadly purpose. Touch her again, he said with deadly calm, and I will take more than your arm. Kill me, and you'll never find the others. Keegan gasped, clutching his shattered limb. Dozens of children, scattered across the territories. Your precious Ayanna was just one of many. Taka hesitated, conflict evident in his face. Where are they? Keegan's lips curled in triumph, despite his pain. Insurance, he hissed. My ticket out of here. He began backing toward the edge of the gulch. Either let me go or the children disappear forever. Sarah had regained her feet, moving to shield Kaya. You won't escape, Keegan. Not this time. I always escape, he sneered, continuing his retreat. I'm too valuable to too many powerful men. None of them noticed Lila emerging from the cave behind him, drawn by the commotion. None except Kaya, who watched in horror as her little sister crept closer, a determined expression on her young face. Lila, no. She screamed as the younger girl lunged forward, pushing Keegan with all her might. Caught off balance, Keegan teetered at the edge of the steep ravine. For one suspended moment, his eyes met Kaya's shock, giving way to hate. Then he plunged backward with a strangled cry, disappearing into the darkness below. A sickening thud, then silence. "He was going to kill you," Lila said simply, her small shoulders squared with the magnitude of what she'd done. Sarah gathered both girls into her arms, tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But Kaya, looking over her mother's shoulder at Taka's solemn face, knew it wasn't over. It was only beginning. The aftermath unfolded in a blur. Sheriff Morton hadn't been killed, as Keegan claimed, merely wounded and unconscious. His deputies, though outnumbered, had managed to capture or drive off most of Keegan's men. Cox had escaped, but with Taka's knife wound in his arm, he wouldn't get far. When Keegan's body was recovered from the ravine, they found a small book in his breast pocket, a ledger with names, dates, and destinations. Children sold like commodities across the frontier. Morton promised to use it to dismantle the trafficking network and, if possible, recover the victims. As dawn broke over the smoldering ruins of their cabin, Sarah, Kaya, and Lila sat with Taka on a flat rock overlooking their land. Despite everything they'd lost, the morning held a fragile sense of hope. "We'll rebuild," Sarah said with quiet determination. "The land is still ours. Your land holds 15 acres according to the true deed," Morton had told them before riding back to town. Not just the 3 Keegan claimed. Taka had remained silent throughout these discussions, his dark eyes frequently returning to Kaya's face with an intensity that made her both uncomfortable and curiously warmed. Finally, when the girls were out of earshot gathering what could be salvaged from the cabin ruins, he spoke to Sarah directly. "I must ask you something," he said, his voice grave. "About Kaya." Sarah's hand stilled in her lap. "What about her? How did she come to you?" A long silence fell. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she gazed after the girl who had been her daughter for 4 years. "You already know, don't you?" she whispered. "I must hear it from you," Taka insisted gently. Sarah took a deep breath. 4 years ago, James was working a claim near the Black Hills. He came back one night, half frozen, carrying a child wrapped in his coat, Kaya. He said he'd found her wandering in the snow miles from anywhere, delirious with cold and fever. Her eyes filled with tears. We had lost our own daughter the winter before. Diphtheria. Kaya was about the same age she would have been. "You took her in?" Taka said softly. Sarah nodded. "She was burning with fever for days. When it finally broke, she didn't remember anything about her life before. The doctor said it was trauma and fever together. Sometimes the mind protects itself by forgetting." She met Taka's gaze directly. "We tried to find her family. James asked in every settlement for miles. But no one was looking for a little Indian girl. I was looking," Taka said, his voice rough with emotion. "For 4 winters I have searched, from the Black Hills to the Missouri River, every town, every settlement." "You believe she's your Ayana?" Sarah said, not a question, but a statement. "I knew it from the moment I saw her in the marketplace," Taka replied. "But I needed to be certain." "How can you be?" Sarah asked, though the fear in her eyes suggested she already knew the answer. Taka reached into his pouch and withdrew 2 objects, the silver bird pendant he had shown earlier, and something wrapped in soft hide. Carefully, he unfolded the hide to reveal a small deerskin doll, worn and faded with tiny beads for eyes. "This was hers," he said simply. "Made by her mother before." He couldn't finish. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. "What will you do now?" Before Taka could answer, Kaya approached, arms filled with salvaged items from the cabin. She stopped short when she saw the doll in Taka's hands, her eyes widening in recognition. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "It was yours," Taka said gently. A gift from your mother when you were 3 winters old. Kaya set down her bundle and reached for the doll with trembling fingers. The moment she touched it, a cascade of memories surged through her. A woman's smiling face, warm firelight, the smell of pine smoke, a boy running through tall grass, and Taka lifting her high toward the sky as she squealed with delight. Ate, she whispered the Lakota word for father, rising unbidden to her lips. Taka's composure finally shattered. Ayana. He breathed, reaching for her with trembling hands. Kaya moved into his embrace as if drawn by some invisible force. The moment his arms closed around her, the fragments of memory coalesced into coherent scenes playing outside her family's teepee. Learning to bead from her grandmother the night of screaming and fire when strangers attacked their village. I remember the fire, she murmured against his shoulder. I ran into the woods. I was so cold. You survived, Taka whispered, his voice breaking. You survived. Sarah watched them with tears streaming down her face, joy and heartbreak, mingled in equal measure. Her daughter, yet not her daughter. Found yet about to be lost again. As if sensing her anguish, Kaya pulled back from Taka's embrace and turned to Sarah. Mom. She said the word, carrying all the love and confusion in her heart. Sarah opened her arms, and Kaya flew into them. You will always be my daughter, Sarah whispered fiercely. Nothing will ever change that. Lila had joined them now, her small face creased with confusion as she looked between Taka and Kaya. What's happening? Why is everyone crying? Kaya knelt before her sister not by blood, but by the shared experiences that had shaped their young lives. How could she explain what she herself barely comprehended? Lila. She began hesitantly. Do you remember the stories Ma used to tell us about angels who watch over lost children? Lila nodded solemnly. Well, sometimes lost children find their way home again. Kaya took a deep breath. Before I lived with you and Ma and Pa, I had another family. A Lakota family. Lila's eyes widened. With Taka? Yes, Kaya confirmed gently. He's my first father. Lila absorbed this. Her young face scrunched in concentration. Then with a child's simple acceptance, she asked, Does this mean you're leaving us? The question hung in the air, voicing the fear that gripped Sarah's heart. Kaya looked between the two families that were both hers, Sarah and Lila, who had loved and raised her for 4 years, and Taka, who had searched tirelessly to find his lost daughter. I don't know. She admitted, the weight of the impossible choice pressing down on her. Taka broke the painful silence. There need not be a choice made today, he said quietly. Or perhaps at all. Sarah looked up sharply. What do you mean? Your land is vast now, 15 acres, the sheriff said. Taka gestured toward the distant hills. Among my people are families displaced by the settlers' advance. Widows with children. Elders with wisdom to share. His eyes held Sarah's steadily. Perhaps there is a place for them here. A place where Ayana need not choose between her two families. Hope flickered across Sarah's tear-streaked face. You're suggesting we live together, whites and Lakota. It would not be easy, Taka acknowledged. But your husband saved my daughter when I could not. Let me now help protect and provide for his family when he cannot. The audacity of the proposal hung in the air between them, a vision so unlikely, so revolutionary in these troubled times, that it seemed almost impossible. Yet as they stood amid the ashes of their old life, the seed of a new beginning took root. James always said there was room enough in this country for everyone. Sarah said finally, if only we could learn to share it. Your husband was a wise man, Taka observed. Yes, Sarah agreed. He was. She looked between Taka and Kaya, then took a deep breath. We have the space, we have the water, and Lord knows we could use the help rebuilding. A tentative smile touched her lips. When can your people come? The joy that bloomed across Taka's normally stoic features transformed him. I will go to them when my strength returns. Perhaps 2 weeks' journey. Will you come back? Kaya asked, echoing her question from days earlier. With the spring, Taka promised. When the earth awakens, we will begin anew. Together. Kaya looked between her two parents from different worlds and felt something settle inside her. The tearing sensation she had been experiencing began to ease, replaced by a sense of possibility. She could be Kaya Miller, daughter of James and Sarah, sister to Lila, schooled in reading and writing. And she could also be a Yana, daughter of Taka, granddaughter of Standing Bear, keeper of Lakota traditions and language. Not one or the other, both. Together, she repeated the word, feeling right in her mouth. The winter that followed was harsh, but hopeful. Sheriff Morton proved true to his word, using Keegan's records to dismantle much of the trafficking operation. Theodore Cox was captured trying to cross into Wyoming territory and brought back to face justice. Several children were recovered from as far away as Chicago and St. Louis. Each recovery strengthened Kaya's connection to her Lakota heritage, as she realized how close she had come to a far worse fate. With help from town, they built a simple cabin to shelter them until spring. Sarah utilized Keegan's blood money found in his mansion and awarded to his victims to purchase supplies for a larger home and seeds for expanded gardens. Kaya divided her time between helping with the rebuilding and learning all she could from Taka about Lakota ways before he journeyed west to bring his people. The day of his departure arrived all too soon. Snow still crowned the distant peaks as he prepared his horse for the long journey. "But 2 moons, he promised Kaya. When the first flowers bloom, we will return." Kaya nodded, fighting back tears. She had only just found her father. Saying goodbye, even temporarily, felt like losing him all over again. "I'll practice my Lakota," she promised. Every day, Taka smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. "And I will practice my English. Perhaps when I return, I will sound as proper as you." He touched her cheek gently. "You have your mother's strength, both your mothers. Hold to that while I am gone." With a final embrace for Kaya and respectful nods to Sarah and Lila, Taka mounted his horse and rode away. Kaya watched until he disappeared from sight, feeling strangely at peace despite the separation. This goodbye was not forever. It was merely a pause in their newly reconnected lives. Spring brought more than the promised return. As the last snow melted from the valleys, a procession appeared on the horizon, Taka leading 3 Lakota families with their belongings loaded on travois. But he was not alone in bringing surprises. A day before his arrival, O'Malley had ridden up to their nearly completed cabin with a young Lakota girl perched before him on his saddle. "Special delivery from St. Louis," he'd announced with uncharacteristic gentleness. "This here's Wichapi, or Ruth, as they called her." Sheriff Morton arranged her return with the authorities back east. The girl, no more than 8 years old, had regarded them warily, until Kaya spoke to her in the Lakota phrases Taka had taught her. Recognition had flashed in the child's eyes, and she'd rushed into Kaya's arms, sobbing with relief at hearing her native tongue after years of forced English. Now, as Taka's procession approached, Wichapi stood beside Kaya, nervously awaiting reunion with her people. When Taka spotted the second Lakota child, his step faltered momentarily before he broke into a rare, wide smile. "You found another," he said to Kaya upon reaching them, his eyes bright with emotion. "Keegan's ledger led to her," Kaya explained. "Sheriff Morton says there may be more." The integration of the 2 communities began cautiously. Gray Dove, Star Woman, and Talks. Much the Lakota women who had led their families to this new beginning were initially reserved with Sarah and Lila, though warm toward Kaya once Taka explained who she was. But Sarah's genuine hospitality and Lila's irrepressible curiosity soon began to thaw the ice. By midsummer, the settlement had taken shape. The main cabin stood completed near the stream, surrounded by a productive garden that combined European vegetables with native plants the Lakota women had introduced. 3 teepees stood in the clearing beyond their occupants, gradually constructing more permanent dwellings for the coming winter. Children of both heritages played together, creating a hybrid language of English and Lakota that only they fully understood. Not everyone approved. Some townspeople muttered about going native and race traders. Occasional night riders appeared at the edge of their property shouting threats before galloping away. But Sheriff Morton made it clear that Sarah's property rights would be respected by force if necessary. And slowly, the harassment dwindled. On a warm autumn evening, as their expanded community gathered around the central fire for the evening meal, a visitor arrived, a young journalist from Chicago named Thomas Blackwater, whose weathered face belied his youthful energy. "I write about the changing West," he explained, his intelligent eyes taking in the mixture of cabins and teepees, the gardens that combined techniques from both cultures, the children playing together at the day's end. About communities that might show a different path forward. "We're hardly a model." Sarah demurred, passing him a plate of food. "Just people trying to survive." "Together," Taka added pointedly. "That is what makes this place different." As the evening progressed, Thomas listened intently as various members of the community shared their experiences. Sarah spoke of her initial fears and how they had been replaced by deep respect. Grey Dove described the desperation that had driven her to accept Sarah's invitation after losing her husband and sons to smallpox. Taka recounted the miraculous rediscovery of his daughter, and Kaya, with growing confidence, told her own story of being both Kaya and Ayana, of the strange journey that had brought her full circle to a new kind of belonging that encompassed both her identities. "It hasn't always been easy," she concluded honestly. "Sometimes the town children call me half-breed or worse. Sometimes I feel caught between worlds. But mostly I feel twice blessed. I have 2 families, 2 traditions, 2 sources of strength to draw upon." As the gathering began to disperse for the night, O'Malley, who had become a frequent visitor and ally, pulled Taka aside for a private word. Kaya, curious, followed discreetly, keeping within earshot, but out of sight. "There's something I need to confess." She heard O'Malley say, his voice strained with emotion. "Something I should have told you months ago." Taka waited silently, his posture alert but not threatening. 4 years back, I rode with Keegan's men." O'Malley continued the words, seemingly torn from him. "Not for the children, God help me. I didn't know about that part until later. He told us we were just scaring off hostiles from a disputed hunting ground." He passed a shaking hand over his face. "I was there that night. At your village." Kaya felt her blood freeze. O'Malley, their friend, their ally, had been part of the attack that had destroyed her first family. Taka's voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously quiet. "You helped kill my people?" "No," O'Malley protested. "I fired over heads, never at people. When I realized what was really happening, the children being taken, I tried to stop it. That's how I got this." He pulled aside his collar to reveal an old scar along his collarbone. "Keegan gave me this when I tried to free one of the little ones. He left me for dead in the snow. Yet you continue to ride with him here in Deadwood." Taka observed coldly. "To watch him," O'Malley insisted. "To gather evidence. I've been feeding information to Sheriff Morton for years, trying to bring down Keegan's operation." He hung his head. "It doesn't excuse what I did or failed to do. But I wanted you to know. I've been trying to make amends." A tense silence fell between them. Kaya held her breath, wondering if Taka would reject O'Malley's confession or, worse, seek vengeance for his role in the tragedy. "There is an old Lakota saying," Taka said finally, The longest journey begins with recognition of the path. He regarded O'Malley steadily. You have found your path. Now you must walk it. Relief washed over O'Malley's face. You're a better man than I deserve to meet, Taka. Perhaps, Taka agreed without humor. But my daughter lives because someone showed mercy when it was not required. I can do no less. He extended his hand, not in the white man's handshake, but palm up in the Lakota gesture of peace. After a moment's hesitation, O'Malley placed his palm against Taka's. I'll continue helping find the other children, he promised. However long it takes. Kaya slipped away before they could discover her eavesdropping, her mind reeling from this revelation. The complexity of the world of people never ceased to surprise her. O'Malley part villain and part hero. Keegan motivated not just by greed, but by a twisted ideology that saw native children as commodities. Even Taka, capable of both lethal violence and profound forgiveness. That night, as she lay beside Lila in their shared bedroom, listening to the night sounds that drifted through the open window, crickets chirping, the soft thump of a nightjar's wings, someone singing a Lakota prayer song. In the distance, Kaya reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had been Ayanna, daughter of proud Lakota parents. She had become Kaya, rescued and raised by loving white settlers. Now she was both, and neither, something new, something that carried the wisdom of both heritages. A bridge between worlds that should never have been separated. The silver bird pendant still hung around her neck, a constant reminder of both what she had lost and what she had found. As she drifted toward sleep, she touched it lightly, drawing comfort from its familiar contours. Whatever the future might hold, whatever challenges their unusual community might face, she knew now that she was exactly where she belonged. In the years that followed, Thomas Blackwater's articles about the Miller Lakota settlement gained national attention. What had begun as a desperate arrangement between a sick mother and a searching father blossomed into a model that others began to emulate in small pockets across the frontier. It was not a perfect solution to the profound conflicts of the era, but it represented something precious and rare, a third way that honored the humanity and dignity of all involved. As for Kaya Ayanna herself, she grew into a remarkable young woman who continued to move between worlds with increasing grace and purpose. By 16, she was teaching in a small school established on the settlement, where children of both backgrounds learned side by side. By 20, she had published her own accounts of Lakota stories and traditions, preserving a heritage that might otherwise have been lost to time and tragedy. The trafficking network Keegan had established was gradually dismantled, though the work continued for years. Each month seemed to bring news of another child recovered, another family reunited. O'Malley dedicated himself to this cause, traveling thousands of miles to follow leads and bring children home. It didn't erase his past complicity, but as Taka had observed, he had found his path and walked it with determination. Most surprising was the arrival 3 years after the settlement's founding of a Lakota woman named Windflower, brought by O'Malley from a remote reservation in Wyoming. Her face was scarred from burns, and years of hardship had bent her once straight back. But when she saw Taka across the compound, she stopped mid-stride, her hand flying to her mouth in shocked recognition. "Hehaka," she whispered, using Taka's Lakota birth name. Taka stood frozen, disbelief etched on his features. "It cannot be," he breathed. "We buried you." But it was Windsong, Taka's wife, and Ayanna's mother believed dead in the attack 4 years earlier. Badly burned and left for dead, she had been found by a Cheyenne hunting party and nursed back to health. By the time she recovered enough to search for her family, the survivors of their band had scattered, and all trace of her husband and children seemed lost. The reunion between mother and daughter was something Kaya would never forget. The disbelief, the joy, the years of grief suddenly transformed into celebration. Another piece of her past restored against all odds. And each spring thereafter, Kaya would climb to the highest point on their land, where she could see for miles in all directions. Deadwood to the east, the sacred Black Hills to the west, and below her, the thriving community that had grown from the simple act of two sisters selling potatoes and a warrior searching for his lost daughter. There, with the silver bird pendant catching the sunlight at her throat, Kaya Ayana would offer prayers of gratitude in two languages, one to the god of her adoptive mother, one to the awaken Taka of her Lakota heritage. Two traditions, two families, two sources of strength flowing together into one remarkable life. And in this way, with quiet determination and open hearts, they showed that even in the hardest times and most divided places, healing was possible. Connection was possible. Hope was possible. It had begun with potatoes, wilted greens, and a desperate cry for help. It had grown into something that none of them could have imagined, a story that would be told and retold long after they were gone. A testament to the power of compassion over fear, of bridge building over wall building. A reminder that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to see the humanity in those we have been taught to consider other, and to respond not with suspicion, but with outstretched hands.